12th of November 2019. That's when Unity of Command 2 is coming out, or came out if you are watching this post-release, which might not be that terrible of an idea, as I've tried to make a distillation of what 2x2 Games, now interestingly in cooperation with their compatriots from Crow Team, has talked about, shown and promised throughout more than 4 years of the new game's development. So that's your chance to see what you're getting into. And as the sequel is about to become available to just everybody, let me use this last shot at peering into the crystal ball of battles and say that, for the most part, the game is a major revolution and not a revolution. If you loved Unity of Command 1, just go and get number 2 as soon as you can. This is what I'm gonna do anyway.
Number 2 also means jobby, for which I profusely apologize.
Alright, enough foreplay. If you're still here, dear watchers and listeners, it's about time we shoved our fingers into the running gear mechanism of fine details. And I think we should first deal with the elephant in the room. Let's push and kick its rotting carcass out and poke it with sticks for good measure. If you ask a man on the street what the worst bit of Unity of Command is, he'll tell you how big of a loony you are. If you ask me, I'll say, lossy bossy whoopie poopy, also campaigns. A whole slew of dubious design decisions turned them into proper frustrator-ramas in the original game. What should have been its centerpiece became its biggest failing. Nintendo hard user interface philosophy, very luck-dependent brilliant victory objectives, and prestige linked to score, rendering it completely useless. All of this makes a disgustingly warm, stale, and bitter cocktail you wish to forget about as you click on the single scenario button to get what Unity of Command is actually good at. Thankfully, it seems that the devs have been fully aware of these weaknesses, and the new campaign certainly promises a thicker carrot and a softer stick. Hey, no brilliant victories for one. At least not in the traditional sense of, take everything we've marked at the right time and go into the decisive victory dickhead corner for all those dickheads with lives, jobs, and relationships. Dev streams show standard objectives and missions resembling the goals of the actual battles, and getting them on time will get you a brilliant victory. But there are optional objectives offering various minor perks for those hardcore enough to drive their tanks into a far corner of the map. They'll give you certain bonuses like prestige, better positions in future battles, and other tasty scraps, and not the dubious and borderline wanky pleasure of getting a perfect score. And oh heavens harlots, yes! Scenarios are now actually connected between one another. Your decisions finally matter! Your divisions do transition between the time spaces of different missions and stop rematerializing out of thin air. Now, onto something that actually made Unity of Command stand out. Supply, and more specifically, how important it was for the gameplay and how relatively simple the supply system was designed. Disappointingly, simplicity also left a lot to be desired in the original. Supply oozing from every railway hex up to an arbitrary distance seemed a bit too abstract. Remember, it's 20-kilometer hexes we're talking about. Plus, it's not really easy to predict if almost encircled units can still be in supply, because supply will snake into every nook and cranny and spoil your day, cockroach style. UOC 2 adds more detail to the supply system, making it more realistic and compelling mechanically. Supply still goes around along railways, and there's still one hex supply zone around the tracks, which makes sense. It's not too far to nick your chocolates, explosive bullets, and pervitin straight off the train car. For anything beyond that, you'll need to set up supply hubs, which spread supply over a certain radius, essentially representing trucks and horse carriages that bring the guns and butter from the backbone railway land to the troops. And that's about how it actually works. It also means that you can go for enemy supply hubs if you want to disrupt the opposition. Encirclement isn't the only option anymore. This wonderfully creates objectives of opportunity. Do you brute force your way towards your goals, or do you slam the supply centers to collapse the enemy front? Those are the kinds of choices an operational commander has to make, and they fit perfectly in Unity of Command. I must also mention the supply efficiency rating that is assigned to every scenario. It's the probability of a unit being actually supplied, provided it's within the range of supply hubs. The idea is to represent the overall level of infrastructure in the area and its capacity for transporting stuff to the troops. Are you fighting somewhere underdeveloped, preferably Soviets? Get ready for spotted coverage, even if you keep your supply lines up. Conducting a naval invasion, supplying your units is going to be hard until you secure major ports. This really looks like a promising feature that adds another touch of realism and complexity without any clutter. There. Intriguing? Certainly. Almost suspiciously wonderful? You bet. What wait? All of this is just corrections in the crappy and refinements in the really good. What about the new stuff? Oh, not that you're asking, how about I finally introduce you to two dodgy and dastardly fellas called... One of the most unrealistic elements of Unity of Command and wargames in general is the tendency towards complete wipeouts. You attack an enemy until it's dead and you may safely forget all about it. For larger units, it's not something you see in real life. A division may sustain significant casualties or become disorganized, but a real disaster must happen for one to be largely or completely lost in action. It is far more likely to retreat, or if defeated to become disorganized or routed. What wargames often do is essentially mashing rouse prisoners, disorganized troops in together with kills. Unity of Command is in no way an exception, but the sequel promises to treat this with more finesse and detail. Every time a unit is attacked and damaged or retreats, there is a chance it spawns stragglers in adjacent hexes, representing routed troops. For the owner of the damaged units, stragglers eventually return to the reinforcement pool. They also make it an incredible nuisance for movement in the area, as they flood the local roads and considerably slow down anyone passing through their hexes. More interestingly, the enemy can intercept and capture these stragglers, prevent them from coming back as reinforcements, and get valuable intel from them, which, gathered in sufficient amounts, can lift the fog of war here and there and reveal the disposition and composition of enemy forces. What nation? Infantry or armor? Strong or weak? Yes, fog of war is coming to UOC, and I'd lie if I said I wasn't ambivalent about it. While it's indisputably more realistic and it certainly adds another point of view to consider the battlefield from, there is value to the old approach. Because you see all or most units, you get more complete information. You look for weaknesses and can reliably plan ahead without gambling too much. You get a chess-like experience that fog of war throws a big greasy spanner into. This is certainly one of the most drastic mechanical changes in the sequel, and it does make me slightly uneasy about how it might affect the enjoyment of the game. How so? On the defense, you get potentially irritating out-of-the-blue counterattacks. On the offense, it means occasionally rushing your top units nose first into ambushes. This is a bristling source of potential frustration in a sequel to a game that already has plenty. One can certainly argue that, like a good commander, you've got to be patient and careful and keep your flanks covered and everything. To which I might reply that while skill should be rewarded, Unity of Command has never been a dedicated hardcore wargame, and with Fog of War, there's a very fine line between, hey, that's a really cool mechanic, it makes me think in new ways and it's thematically appropriate, and hammering the restart button in bubbling rage. The developers are clearly trying to balance it, what with the intel effect and the recon plane ability, and I really wish them to succeed, but the screw-up zone is still out there and it's huge. Huge is also probably the right word to use for some of the other new features of the game, so let's not brood over the dubious and smash our faces right into the happy jelly chock full of... Embarrassing questions time! How often do you usually restart a mission in Unity of Command simply because an air support roll fails? Leading question, Your Honor. How would they know if I do that at all? I restart mission all the time because I blew up bridges I shouldn't. There! I'm a bridge blower. Mean, filthy bridge blower. I said it, get off my back! Scenario abilities like air support, partisans, or bridging were an important element, a staple, and sometimes a crutch of the first game. Unity of Command 2 will boost their number considerably and will add a nice gameplay twist to offer players even more agency. Let me present to you HQ, standing for Corps and Army level command units on the battlefield. Their main task will be to provide the divisions and brigades assigned to them with special actions, like getting reinforcements, or repairing a bridge, or mechanizing a unit, which sounds exactly as brilliant as you think. Now, what about a set-piece attack? It removes a step of fortifications for an enemy unit, regardless of the attacker's stats. Ditto fire superiority ability as you bombard and suppress the enemy without any losses. And when the weather finally turns typhoon, you can send emergency supplies. The list of abilities will stretch further, and it will be faction dependent, as for example American and British HQs will get different perks. Obviously, all this gorgeousness would simply be way too good if there wasn't some sort of scarcity involved, so all these abilities consume command points provided in limited supply. Plus, what you have available depends on the level of your HQs, which gather experience and can be upgraded with new abilities, more movement, and command points every 6 months of the war, with a big hooray from the untidy basements of min-maxers. Good. Let's talk about what makes my shameful regions pleasantly tingle as an inveterate board gamer. You know, it's cards. Support. cards, which you can get for prestige as a reward for taking bonus objectives. They represent special actions and bonuses that go beyond the level of the battles you are fighting. They have favors from the top brass, and it's really hard not to appreciate them. I mean, who wouldn't want an additional air or naval attack over an entire airborne division exactly when you ask for one? I absolutely love this idea because cards, and from what I understand, they'll persist between battles, adding new cool ways of cracking missions and tactical approaches that could not have been predicted by scenario designers. The innovations in this game go far beyond the topics I've talked about, and I've talked about enough already, so let me just bullet point my way through some of the more interesting bits. The base game is only going to cover the Western Front, with North Africa, Italy and France invasions, which is a bit sad given the glorious Soviet-German campaigns of the original, but it's also brilliant because of new climactic and terrain conditions of the new theaters, and the naval landings of anything. And anyhow, the developers have already promised to throw players into 9 levels of logistics hell with downloadable content covering the Eastern Front. What else? Haven't I mentioned naval assaults? What about airborne landings, or roads that actually help movement in difficult terrain, or a deployment phase before every mission where you can lay out your troops and give them specialist steps, up to 2 per unit? How about weather that doesn't slow down the game, or map rotation, or new and nifty graphics? That's the sequel for you. As it's coming out really soon, I'm planning a quick follow-up video in the coming week or so. So stay around, watch my other videos, and gently squeeze the conveniently located subscribe button while you wait. See you on the front line.